Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's Christina from Our Wood Home. As you can tell from the title of this video, it is part 2 of my garden tour. As you'll notice in these first few clips, I've got a lot of things covered by pots. That's because at the end of May we had a late frost warning here in Ontario, Canada, and unfortunately I had already planted some things in the soil. I don't normally do this. I always wait until the first week of June at least to plant things. That's because sometimes in Ontario we do get frost pretty late in May. However, this year the forecast was really warm. It was calling for much warmer temperatures than usual for this time of year, so I had decided to plant things outside in the last week of May. Thankfully, I did check the weather as I had heard rumblings of frost warnings, so I was able to cover up all my delicate little seedlings and they didn't get frost damage, which is great. But lesson learned, now I will not be planting things until June, regardless of an unseasonably warm spell, because the weather is unpredictable here in Ontario. So I did manage to save everything. I didn't cover my potatoes because they were pretty hardy and I didn't have any frost damage. Usually I start these garden tours in the front yard, but now I'm going to be starting in the backyard. Here are the new-ish planters I have, the most recent planters. In this I have a little pumpkin there and some dill, and I have a second pumpkin plant and Swedish peas. I'm not sure what the exact name is, but my pen pal in Sweden sent them to me. I ended up doing a lot of things differently than from my first video update. I had thought I would put cabbage in here because it's nice and protected and safe, which is why I have a dill plant, because cabbage and dill grow well together and dill helps deter cabbage moths. But I decided to plant the cabbages somewhere else because I already had a lot of dill established there. So putting the pumpkin here was kind of a last minute idea. I think it will do pretty well because there's lots of space for it to grow along the ground, and the peas will grow upwards, so there won't be competition, hopefully. Now we're in my herb garden area. These little green things are sunflowers, which I planted from sunflowers in my chicken's bird food. I'm glad that these grew. We did have a little chipmunk incident. It was chewing the little plants as they were popping up, but we managed to keep them safe. Also here I've got 2 calendula plants which are looking really pitiful, so I'm hoping that they perk up over the season. I also transplanted some echinacea that was growing in a place where I tried to sow the seeds probably 2 or 3 years ago, and they were just now popping up, so I moved them here. I'm hoping they'll grow here nicely. I also had what I think is a basil plant growing in my yard, so I dug that up. This is a spearmint plant I bought from the grocery store last year. It looked dead, but I was seeing some little things popping up, and I noticed it has a really long root. I don't know how spearmint grows. I've never grown it before, but I tried to bury this the best I could after accidentally ripping it up, and since I'm seeing some new little green things at the base, I'm hoping that it will continue to grow. I do have another spearmint in here, but it looks pitiful. Those are just the other echinaceas. But the spearmint plant I bought, you can see right here, it doesn't look like it's doing very well, so I don't have much confidence in that. I've got a small watermelon plant here, actually 2 of them. Again, they're not doing great. Most things are not doing great in my gardens, but hopefully they grow a bit more throughout the season. We're still very early in the season. This footage was taken first week of June. This is my variety of beans. The one on the far left is one I planted from mystery beans that I just had in my seed collection, and the others are actually yellow pole beans that I let dry on the vine and then planted those in the ground, and they were just kind of late bloomers, but they popped out. Here are our heirloom snow peas from snow peas that we grew in 2013. More watermelon over here. I'm thinking this will be a good spot for them. We'll see. I also have a lot of comfrey popping up in that garden. This is my main vegetable garden. As you can see, I've got a new addition, which is the scarecrow I made. Well, David made it for me, and I decorated it with some of my old clothes. We have 3 rows of potatoes now. You can see the first 2 rows nice and established, and then the row in front is where I just planted some over the weekend. I had a lot of extra potatoes that were sprouting in my potato bin, so I decided to go ahead and plant all of those here. They might be a little tight, but hopefully they still do all right, and I'm hoping we have a pretty good crop of potatoes this year. Next are my 2 rows of beets. These are doing pretty well. They're still small. There's lots of competition with the weeds. As you can see, I'm pulling out some bindweed, which is probably the bane of my existence when it comes to gardening. This year I decided just to plant, I think, Detroit Dark Red beets as opposed to Detroit Dark Red and Early Wonder. I can't remember which variety, but I didn't really notice a difference with them last year, so I decided just to do all one variety. I think the scarecrow is going to work well to keep out birds and other animals from my garden because it startles me every time I see it. I think it's a person standing there, and my dog was really freaked out by it at first. The rest of the garden is little tomatoes, which again are pretty small, but that's because I had a late start to them, but they're doing pretty well. We just have, I think, 12 plants, which is much less than usual, but that's okay. I'm also growing onions this year. I bought a bag of little onions at the Walmart Garden Center and decided to give that a go. I had this extra space in my row of tomatoes, so I planted some extra onions here. And I like to use sticks or feathers or something just to mark where I'm planting things so that I know what to look for when I'm weeding. This is my giant planter full of mostly thyme. As you can see, it's pretty much taken over. It's a creeping thyme plant. But in here is some spinach. I have 2 varieties. This is my first time growing spinach, I believe. So far it's doing all right. I did plant some more the other day so I can get some succession planting going and hopefully have spinach long into the summer. Over here is lettuce. I planted lettuce here last year and let it go to seed. So the majority of what you see here is actually the self-seeding lettuce with a couple plants that I started indoors this year. But all of this is self-seeded lettuce, so it's pretty cool to see that. I'm definitely going to have to pull out some of the thyme, but I'll just cut it out and dry it for later. This garden is the front of our house. I have an echinacea plant here as well. It grows in a different spot in my yard, which is fine. I like it up there, but I want it to do better, so hopefully it'll thrive here. I put some cabbages here just to fill in some space and to see how they do. Spoiler, they are not doing well. Some of them died and the others are pretty tiny. As I said, cabbage moths don't like dill or thyme from what I've read, so I planted some of both around the cabbages, and hopefully that keeps them safe because last year my one and only cabbage was destroyed by cabbage moths. I also have some garlic here. I planted some here and a little bit further down in a little homemade cage, which was really just to protect them and to remind me where they were planted since I planted them first. And of course my rhubarb plants, which I'm hoping will take over this garden nicely. Since it's at the front of our house, I think it will look pretty nice to have it just full of rhubarb and some other things down the road. But this was a flower bed, so it's taken a lot of work to get it to the way I want it to look right now. Now we're going into the backyard again, and these are the big planters around my patio. I have some zucchini here, which I bought from a garden center. I had tried to start some. I think this is my 3rd time this year trying to start zucchini seeds, which are marked by those sticks there, and they just weren't taking, so I decided just to buy a 3-pack of zucchini, I think. One of them got squished, so I don't think it's going to come back. We'll see what happens with that. I don't have high hopes. Over here are my English cucumber plants. I decided to put those closest to the house so that they're easier to grab just before dinner if we want a cucumber. On this side, I had planned to do acorn squash or butternut squash, I can't remember, but of course those things died as well. So in this space I put more onions because I bought a bag with I think 100 onions in it and I was running out of space in my veggie garden. So I think they'll do nicely here and fill in this area a fair bit. Here is my pitiful squash plant. I think I had about 4 planted here, and that's the best looking one. I had another one just over here. I don't know what happened to it. It's definitely dead. They're getting enough water and a lot of sunlight. I know the soil's not great, so I'm not really sure what the problem is, but it is discouraging, I'll be honest. Over here is my self-seeding dill. I planted a few plants last year and they just took off with the seeds this year. So I decided to do cabbage here. And I think it will do nicely. It should be pretty protected from the cabbage moths due to all this crazy dill that's taking over. Some of my cabbage plants are looking kind of pitiful. Others are looking a little bit better. So I don't think I'll get very many cabbages, definitely not as many as I had hoped, but we're not big cabbage eaters. I just thought it would be something interesting to try growing. So hopefully they work out. In these 2 little pots, I have some more spinach and lettuce, I think. I'm going to fill those in this area. This was another flower planter, so it's taken a lot of work to get all the flowers out, and it's definitely going to be a long process to fully clean it out. I'm still finding remnants of that in each planter. Over here are some carrots, I hope. I planted 2 types of carrots in 2 rows here, and it took a while for them to pop up, but I'm finally seeing something, so that's great. Of course there's lots of weeds, but I'm leaving them for now because they're so interwoven with the carrots. I don't want to damage those by pulling out the weeds, so I'm going to leave it until the carrots get a little bit bigger and then tackle that. In this planter, I decided to do my pickling cucumbers. I had a lot more plants and something happened and they just started shriveling up slowly. So I have fewer plants than I anticipated, but that's okay because I think last year I had too many pickling cucumbers and we just couldn't use them all fast enough. I made a lot of pickles. I also have some bell peppers, which I grew from seed, so I'm pretty excited about that. I think they're multicolored peppers, maybe some green as well. We'll see what they look like when they start ripening. On this side I have turnip, or parsnip. No, it's parsnip. I tried to grow these years ago and it just didn't work, and I gave up. This is my 2nd time trying, and like the carrots, I didn't think anything was going to grow, but I'm seeing a lot, so I'm hoping that these are the parsnips. Since I haven't grown them before, I don't really know what they're supposed to look like, but that looks like a little seed on the end of that one, so I'm hoping that's what it's going to be. You can see that I've got some remnants of the daylilies in this planter, and that's been quite the chore trying to pull those out. Thankfully, I have lots of time. I had planned to do another type of squash along here, and that did not work out at all. So I tried to plant some more seeds of the squash. We'll see if they grow, but again, I don't think they will, which is okay because I decided to plant some extra watermelon here instead. Hopefully that grows nicely. I think it'll be a good spot for them because there's a lot of room and there's not going to be much competition since there's nothing else on this side. If the squashes grow instead, that would be great. I would be happy with that, but for now, it is what it is. I hope I don't sound like a big whiner in this video, complaining about all my seeds dying, but it is discouraging. I spent a lot of time and effort planting all these seeds indoors, and I had expected that they would do well outside, and when they didn't, it was disappointing because I felt like all my planning was pointless and that it wasn't worth the struggle and the frustration. I know that there's no guarantees with gardening. It's always a risk to plant something because it might not germinate, it might not thrive, but it's still frustrating, especially because I had such big plans for all the extra gardens that I had taken over from flower beds to turn into vegetable areas. So it's frustrating. I'm still trying to be positive because the things that are growing seem to be doing all right, and even if they don't, that's okay. We're not completely dependent on our homegrown produce yet. I think we'd like to be more independent in the future, but for now, the things we grow, we could still buy at the grocery store if we needed to supplement that. But I'm still going to keep working at my gardens and trying to make sure that they do well and thrive throughout the summer so that we get a nice harvest at the end of the season. Of course, I'll be posting updates throughout the summer and probably into the fall as well, depending on the weather. I thank you so much for coming with me through my gardens for this part 2 of the video tour. If you like what you see on my channel, I hope that you consider subscribing, and please let me know what you see at the end of this video on the end screen, because I've been having some trouble with the subscribe icon and the video recommendation icon not coming up. So if you see those or if you don't see those, please let me know either way in the comments and I can try to fix that in the future. Again, thank you for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day.